Welcome to the Calmer Mom podcast, where we go from conception through pregnancy, birth, and beyond to help you be the mom your kids are actually asking for. Pregnancy, birth, and motherhood aren't easy, but they don't have to be so hard. You're not alone in this journey. I'm Michelle Noble, creator of the Calmer Mom Project. Mama, I've been there, and I've got your back. So let's begin. Welcome, mamas. Welcome back to the Calmer Mom podcast. I'm Michelle Noble, your host, the Calmer Mom coach, and I am so honored that you're here with us, and I am so honored to be joined by my special guest and my dear friend, Diana Jyoti. And you know what, Diana, I meant to ask you this before we recorded. Am I saying your name actually correctly?
You are.
Excellent. Yes. I had the experience recently of a friend that I've known for years. I spent some time with her when she was introducing herself, and I'm like, oh, wow, how awkward. I've been saying her name wrong for a really long time. Fortunately, her last name, not her first name. Anyway, that aside, Diana gave me her little bio intro, which I am going to read because I love how it's written, and I love some of the things that are in it, but I might just riff a little on how amazing you are on my own as well. Diana currently works full-time as a hospice nurse, where she loves helping people to transition with dignity and grace. Before that, she worked as a nutritionist, school nurse, breastfeeding consultant, and maternity nurse, helping people to transition into life. She currently offers life coaching and healing sessions out of her office in Seattle, where she resides with her fiance and children. Diana has trained in spiritual response therapy, intuitive energy and embodiment work, constellation therapy, and heart-centered hypnotherapy. And I have been so fortunate to know Diana for quite a few years now. Her daughters are similar in age to my oldest daughter. And I believe, didn't we first meet through the Girls Goddess Circle?
Yeah,
Is that your memory as well? Yeah. And someday I will have Vila. Vila is another amazing coach and healer and mother, and she did these goddess circles for our daughters. Which was how we got.
Isn't that funny how it comes around that the goddess brought us together, and here we are talking about the goddess and putting more of the goddess out into the world.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. So what Diana's speaking to, is that she is also a best-selling author now, as am I, as our book that we co-authored with a bunch of other amazing writers, amazing women, amazing goddesses, has just come out as of the time of our recording. It's on Kindle pre-order on Amazon. It is called Stories of the Goddess, and it will be coming out in paperback early May, I believe.
Yes, so, I think April.
We'll put that in the show notes.
3rd, isn't that? Is that no?
Yeah, so I think that the Kindle book itself comes out if you go and pre-order it now, join the wave, join the rising tide of Stories of the Goddess recipients, and pre-order it on Kindle. Then it'll come into your inbox on April 23rd. And then after that, the paperback will be coming out shortly after that as well. And you can join the rising tide of those who have it in their hot little hand to gaze at the beautiful cover.
I'm so glad
so anyway, we'll put links to that in the show notes. Anyway, so we are both authors in this book called Stories of the Goddess, which is an amazing collection of women telling their stories of their journeys, of empowerment, of their connection with goddesses or the goddess within. And we both have chapters, and both of our chapters are around topics of birth, conception, motherhood. And I really wanted to talk with Diana and invite her to talk about what she knows about communicating with your baby even before your baby is born.
Yes. So, I have 2 daughters who are now 12 and 14, and I write about this in my chapter, but from the moment that I found out that I was pregnant, I actually knew I was pregnant before I found out because there was a spark. I literally felt the spark inside of me. But as soon as I got the positive test, I was so excited. I realized that there was an energy field around me that was not mine. And when I would go into deep meditation, and, you know, maybe you want to call it journeying, um, into a theta state, a meditative state, I found that I could actually communicate with this energy field because everything is energy. Everything is energy. And I believe that the consciousness of a soul also has energy. So I began inviting this being, my daughter's energy consciousness, to communicate with me. And I still remember just feeling the essence of her even before she was born. And this is not even inside of me. I felt it around me. It wasn't really until later in the pregnancy that I felt it inside of me. And that was different for each of my pregnancies. But I believe that every single woman has the potential to communicate with the consciousness of their unborn child, um, and to really value what that consciousness has to say. It has its own willpower from the very get go, you know. And
Yeah.
I believe that we are much more than just cells coming together. I believe that we are consciousness. We have a soul. That soul can go on and, go into another realm, perhaps another dimension, and eventually be reborn. And my experiences have confirmed that for me in my life. And I would just encourage every single mother out there to tap in, open your heart, open your being to the potential of communicating with this unborn consciousness.
I love how you said that, to open your being, open your consciousness to communicating with this unborn being. And I would say this unborn being who has chosen you
Yes.
for whatever, as you said, they have their own agendas.
Yeah.
They have their own purposes and missions and visions and consciousness. And for whatever reason, which we may never know,
Yeah.
they have chosen you to be part of that journey. Whether it's in, I had uh, I had two miscarriages, one before Rosemary's pregnancy and one between the two girls before Gussie's pregnancy.
Mm.
Um, and so in those cases, at that time, those beings did not fully embody, right? I mean, those but miscarriages were both between 8 and 10 weeks.
Yeah.
However, they still chose me. And, so I can from that look at like what are the gifts in that for me, and just to acknowledge that there was we spend so much energy on trying to get motherhood right.
Oh, yeah.
Like so much
Yeah.
trying to get pregnancy, like trying to be some kind of a perfection. And that, so I got off on that side note in a way, but that's part of, I believe, like that's part of being open to this communication with this soul, is they chose you. And what if you could get really super curious about that? Like, wow,
Yes.
they chose me. Hey, let's have a conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
Being who is also infinite. As you said, you could perceive your daughter's being around you, bigger than you and your body, and certainly her body,
Mhm.
before you could perceive her being internally inside of your
Sure.
body. Like, to have that
Yeah.
curiosity.
We can do that for ancestors. We can do that for other beings. Why can't we do that for the being of the soul of the little one who's going to be coming through? It's unlimited potential in what we can communicate with. And
And I don't know.
yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Oh, just that what that sparked was about how, if I don't know if most people probably may have had, hopefully have had a circumstance where they were trying to do something for somebody and were trying so hard to like get it right or do it right or help the person, and then they were able to have an actual conversation with that person, and they discovered that the way that they were trying to help wasn't what was actually required. or
Mm.
in your case, with all the work you do, the work you've done before you were doing hospice, and now the work you do as a hospice nurse, I'm sure that you have a lot of conversations with people around what do they actually require? What
Yes.
assistance can you actually be that makes you one of the I mean, I love that about you. You're not coming in with this like agenda of like, I know what you need and I'm going to give it to you. And then you'll be
Exactly.
better, damn it. Cuz that's what I want to have happen here. You come in
Mhm.
question and vulnerability and openness. Um
Yeah.
so I want to come back to that as like those conversations you have with the clients you work with. But like, why do we have this idea that with the beings of our children, we come in with this idea we're supposed to be able to know everything they need. It's
Right.
like, like just know it and give it to them instead of actually being in question, having a conversation.
Oh, that's
Hey, baby.
so beautifully said and so true. Why do we feel like we have to be in control of everything? When we can let go of the control is when we can actually be in communion with what is present to us. And this being is coming in to be present to us for something. There's some lesson, there's some learning, whether or not that pregnancy is meant to be held to term, right? There is something in it. And it might be something that we are not even conscious of. I also believe that we have contracts and that contracts can be changed and they can be modified. I'm asking us to go a little higher here in this, in that, um, you know, if we are these unlimited beings of willful potential and intention, and we can create anything in our lives, why can't we uncreate as well? That is part of the creation process. And so, I've had the wonderful experience of creating two beautiful daughters who I get to co-create with every day. But I also had the experience of creating and going into contract with a soul that when I actually sat down and communicated with her and I let her know that circumstances had changed in my life and would be different in her life than what I had previously thought them to be, that she actually chose to not come in. It was a co-creative process. And what I'm speaking to is, the abortion that I had with my third pregnancy. When I tapped in and tuned in to this being and to myself, it was really clear that it was not in the highest good for her to come through me at that time, in that place, under those circumstances. And I just, I honor like the fact that we can uncreate as a co-creative process. We can modify
That
contracts.
that is
You know?
beautiful. And if you look at nature, the way nature functions, where nature doesn't have such a fixed point of
Oh
view
yes.
like people tend to about what is good and what is bad, the destruction, if there was not destruction, if there was not letting go, if there was not death, nature cannot thrive. I mean, they talk about when they reintroduced the wolves to Yellowstone, how the whole ecosystem began to thrive. And part of that is some of the populations of the prey animals
Yeah,
were impacted by with death because the wolves were there.
that is
And yet the whole ecosystem
a
and
perfect
that
example.
yeah, and the
Yeah.
ecosystem when we've spoken about this, about your communication with the spirit that was coming into your body,
Hmm.
her willingness and your choice to have the abortion, and that came from looking at the ecosystem of your family.
Yes.
You have your two beautiful daughters, you
Yeah.
have yourself, your career, everything you're creating, your circle, your amazing community and circle of all these things.
Yeah.
Your body, honoring your body and what it would require over the next weeks, months, years in order to thrive, your
Yeah.
economy, what it would require to thrive.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just to be clear, I didn't even feel like she was in my body. I felt like she was still outside of me.
Mm.
And um I think that's important because I think if I had felt her inside of me at that point, I probably would have kept her. I probably would have decided that okay, this is already she's already embodied, but and that's for every woman to make that decision for herself and her child. That's just simply my personal choice and experience in it. But yeah, we just, if we can let go of these preconceived notions of how our lives are supposed to look and how motherhood is supposed to be all sacrificing in every moment, um, and actually self-care. I think that anytime we're self-caring, we're actually caring for others too. What's in our highest good is always in the highest good of others as well. It really is. It's just actually knowing and checking in. Okay, what is in my highest good here? Which takes time. It takes resourcing. It takes the ability to go within, to feel one's body, to feel one's emotions. I think a lot of times that's scary for people, and they don't know how to do that. And so it's easier to just want to try and control everything. Um,
Yeah.
I know that when I go in with a hospice patient, the first thing I do is introduce myself. The second thing I do is ask them, what do you want? Where are you? How do you want this process to look? Do you even want to be in this process? Is hospice correct, right for you? What are your goals? And, to just sit and take even 2 minutes with a patient, um, to understand where they're at in this collaborative experience in which I'm here to make the best out of a really difficult situation for you. That's my job, you know? And maybe that's our job as parents.
I was gonna say, I'm going to ask that we put into the show notes, and I'm gonna give our listeners a little, we call it home play, not homework, because who wants to work, but let's play. Those questions that Diana just said were her questions that she asks when she goes in with a new hospice client who's transitioning at end of life. I'd love for you to take those questions, and wherever you are in your motherhood journey, if you are looking to conceive and you're opening yourself up
Mm.
to whatever being might choose to come into your body, ask those questions of that being. And if you are already pregnant, ask those questions of the being
Oh, I
that is
just got
embodying within you.
chills,
I know, right? And
Michelle.
if you already have children, in my case, my children are old enough that I could ask those questions of them and have it be an actual conversation if I
Mm,
could find the moment where they were, whatever those car conversations, like,
yes.
or those conversations that always happen at the time of the night when the mom would most like to go to bed and be done for the day. That's when those deep heart to heart things, like, suddenly they're like, Mom, I've been pondering the mysteries of life, and I'd like you to help me with that. And you're like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
So when you have those spaces, if you've got an older child, but even if your child is like 1 or 2 or 3,
Yeah.
have that energy in a conversation with them and allow. It's not about getting right answers or clear answers. It's not about the answers. It's just about actually being in that question of wonderment
Well,
with another. Ask your spouse or your partner,
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that
so
the
good.
idea of the wonderment, because I talk about the mystery. That is the mystery right there. That is the being in the curiosity and the wonder, which you are just such a wonderful example of, Michelle. I mean, in your daily life, as I know you, you're just so curious and always want to ask so many questions. And it's of this place of divine love that you do so, I feel. And yes, I think the trick is, when our little ones are, um, perhaps not born yet or pre-verbal, and they can't answer those questions, how do we as a mature adult parent get to the place where we can listen, where we know how to listen for the downloads of knowingness that they are communicating to us non-verbally? Because that's the key to feeling all of life. I mean, half of my hospice patients are nonverbal, but I can
Mm.
walk into a room and I can sit with them and I can know and have a sense of this is what they need because they're telling me. They're telling me with their being, not with their lips. And I think if we can help mothers and fathers, right, to get to this place where, they're sympathetic nervous system is regulated. They're calm, they're grounded, they're present in their body. They can actually listen. And so I think a lot of this ability or capacity that all human beings, I believe, have, not just, special shamans and woo-woo people, like everybody has this capacity. I think it's cultivated though with practice, and then that practice comes from healing ourselves and from doing the work to get rid of the patterns and the worry and the thought patterns and the negativity and the habits and the programming and the programming and programming that is all in the way of us being completely present with another being's consciousness. So
Mm.
the healing that we do for ourselves is absolutely critical to being able to even hear the messages that our little ones and perhaps dying ones are trying to share with us. We just have to get out of
That
our
is
way,
so
you know?
yeah, that is so gorgeous. Um, do you have any kind of pragmatic exercises, or for those who really haven't played with that kind of listening, do you have any from your experiences, thoughts, or information on how that practice could start?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, sometimes we have to get to the point where we're so far out of that that we realize we have a problem. I mean, I'll just share a little story that comes to mind of, when my daughters were 6 months and 2 years, I was in fight or flight mode for those first couple of years that my children were young. I was not in my body. I was dissociated most of the time. I was in sympathetic mode most of the time. I was not a healthy mother. I'll be completely honest. And I remember one time where they were 6 months and 2 years, and my ex-husband left that husband at the time left for a 2-week trip to India. And the day that he left, we all fell sick with the flu. And it was, high temps, nobody sleeping. They were still breastfeeding, so everyone was screaming, they were crying, they were co-sleeping, but nobody was getting sleep. And by the second or third day, I literally thought I was going to go crazy. I mean, literally. I didn't know how to ask for help back then either. I didn't know how to be that vulnerable. And we lived in a city where I
Mm.
didn't have family. So I remember getting to the point where I literally thought I was going to go crazy. And I got down on my knees with the two kids screaming in the other room, mama, mama, just I can hear my 6-month-old just screaming top of her lungs. And I just got down on my knees and I prayed. I remember praying, Lord, God, my goddess, give me the strength to be able to do this, to be in a place where I can give to these kids. I'm clearly not that right now. And I remember seeing two tunnels, and in one I was ended up literally in the crazy loony bin. And through the other tunnel, I saw myself as a healed, actualized, present, grounded, loving mother. And then I actually felt that move through me. And within 2 hours, two people called offering help and support. Right.
Wow.
So I think sometimes we have to get so far pushed so far out that we realize, oh, there's actually something that I need to do here to heal. And then I think a lot of it is surrender. Um, and just meditation practices, um, taking time for self-care to go within. I've reached out to so many healers and teachers over the last 15 years or so. We can't do it alone. There's oftentimes so much trauma, and so much of that trauma itself is pre-verbal, that we have to have someone to hold us through. So there's so many resources of amazing healers out there who are willing and ready to help. And I know you, Michelle, are one of them. And I have,
Thank you.
benefited from receiving your services. And, you know, gosh, I recommend you to anybody out there who's feeling a little off, or they know that they've got trauma, or they're triggered, or their buttons are pushed and they just don't feel like they have the capacity to hold it together for other human beings and be that responsible. you know
Hmm.
that's your work. It's right there. They are literally pointing you, all these little beings, these little children that we're having, and our partners, all of our relationships are pointing us to the growth and the healing work that we're here to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's right there.
It's right
Yeah.
there. It's right there. And one of the things I love about your story from when your girls were so little and everybody was sick was that you perceived two tunnels. And so that probably was a point in your life where you didn't really feel like you had choice. I mean,
Yeah.
you could have walked away. You could have just left them,
I
but
could
that
have.
didn't probably seem like like a choice.
Yeah.
Like you really your husband wasn't there. Like you probably felt like you didn't have choice. And yet when you allowed yourself to get vulnerable and to ask, you actually did have a choice.
Yeah.
Cuz you could have gone, "Yep, the loony bin sounds like a place I could get some sleep."
It- and you know what? It would have been okay. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, here's the thing. It would have been another round of trauma passed down to my children, is what it would have been. Because,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have healed any of mine. They wouldn't have had a mother who was present to them, and they would have accumulated all the trauma that was passed down to me that I didn't know I had until I got pregnant.
Mhm.
Right? And then it's like, oh, it's all here to be healed, and I'm supposed to take care of children. How? There's too much. But it would have got passed down, and maybe or maybe not, they would have done the work themselves. And it's okay. It would have been okay. It's not
Right.
ideal.
Neither choice.
Right?
Those were not a right choice and a wrong
There's no
choice.
wrong choices.
There is no wrong choice.
Yeah.
However, as you say, the possibilities in the choice you made have been much
They've
lighter
been much
over
lighter.
time.
Yes. I believe
Yeah.
spirit was showing me, we all have the willpower to choose in every moment that we're in. But I believe spirit was showing me, if you start down this path, this is where you're going to be. This is what it's going to feel
Yeah.
like, and this is what it's going to look like. And I feel like I'm actually there in my life now. Like I actually feel like I'm 99% that. So thank you, spirit, for showing me what was possible.
Yeah, that's cool. Um Sorry, there was something else about that I wanted to come back to with that. Oh, with that practice with the practice of just beginning the practice, I guess is where I'm going with this. Because there are so many one of the tools that I teach my clients is to begin to practice to tap into what they would like their life to be like. And when you're describing these two tunnels and how now you see these years later, over a decade later, where your life is like that energy that you perceived as a possibility and you chose toward.
Yeah.
And by when you were on your knees on the floor and you chose toward it, you did not know that there would then be almost immediately people who would offer you support. You did not know that.
No.
And you didn't choose it in order to get that result. You were aware of an energy that was like what you were asking for, and you chose toward it.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think is the gift of taking some time, no matter how uncomfortable it is, to be I'll call it meditation, but some kind of a state of vulnerability and presence with yourself and practice the art of listening
Oh, yeah.
and stillness, is that then it becomes easier. Not only does it become easier to know who you are, it becomes easier to know what you would like to have, so you can recognize it when it comes knocking on your door. And it also becomes easier to receive the gift of others, to be able to ask our children at any age, even those that have not even begun as a pregnancy yet, and listen and be able to hear and trust that. But it is, and it's a practice. It's not, I have done, I know, like there are times when I'm going like, okay, I'm going to take myself to a new place with this, and I'm going to really drop my barriers. I'm going to really get vulnerable. Is that a barrier? Okay, what if that was gone? I'll literally lay in bed and I'll go, okay, what do I notice? There's some tension there. Is that a barrier? Yeah. What if that was gone? And that's that curiosity. I don't
Mhm.
try to make it go away. I go, huh, what if that was gone? Oh, wow, that's different. Not actually more comfortable, less. Ah, and I've been able to stay with something like that is short for like 10 seconds. And then I'm like, and I gotta buy cat food, and let's see, maybe it's time to get up now. Gotta go to the bathroom. It's like thoughts come in because it's uncomfortable, but it's the practice of being. If you're willing to stay with that unfamiliar sensation
Yeah.
for 10 seconds, you've just created a whole new possibility.
Yes.
And maybe next time it'll be 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And some days it'll be back to 5, and some days it'll be 5 minutes, and at some point it can become something you can pull up as a tool at will,
Yes.
at choice. I'll say not at will, at choice.
Yes. That's so beautifully said, all of it. And I think so much of our unwillingness to go to that place of curiosity and surrender, and, listening, internal listening, um, is fear. And it's fear, I think, that we're going to uncover something that we can't possibly move through, that we don't have the resources for, or that we're, unequipped for, or something's going to break us apart. But the reality is, when we actually go there, it's not always comfortable, but we are resourced. We, it's in the within of going to within that we find the resources and the tools that we need to move through that discomfort and that fear. If we never go there, we don't even know what we have to move through it with. So it's almost like you just have to take that leap of faith, whether it's the 10 seconds, a leap of faith, right? Or an hour leap of faith of going, and actually looking within and addressing those scared little wounded childlike parts of ourselves. But that leap of faith of, I'm going to just surrender to all of this emotion and all this feeling and all this angst or whatever it is, and then wait for the tools to come in, because
Yeah.
they're actually there. And it's also I think in that state that we get the brilliant ideas, and we get the downloads of like, take this step, do this next, and or I'm going to help arrange for that phone call to come in for you. Right? The universe is working on our behalf. We are so resourced in ways that we can't even imagine. I mean, I don't think we even know how resourced we all are in this universe. But when we take that first step and open to receiving the gifts, then it's like the path just unfolds one step at a time in front of us, and we can surrender to that process.
One of those meditations I was mentioning that I found so uncomfortable was a time when I asked if I was truly willing to receive, if I was truly receiving from everything and everyone who would like to contribute to me, what would that be like? And it was so intense,
Mm,
and it was exquisite, and it was intense. because
yeah.
and it showed me how much I am, like you say, how resourced I am, how the universe, the angels, the beings of light, entities, ancestors with and without bodies, my husband, my children.
Yeah.
If you take a moment and you ask that question, what would my children like to gift to me
Mm,
that I could receive? They actually are here and willing to gift to us
yeah.
in many ways,
Yeah.
because they're actually smart enough to know that if they gift to us, we'll be able to gift more to them too,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Well, and they are are little mirrors, right? So they are going to mirror back everything. And when we are in our light, they are going to shine back light to us. And, when we're not, they're going to shine that back too. And we do the same for them, right? So
Absolutely.
we, as the adults, have the responsibility to find our light, shine it brighter so that they can get a glimpse of that, right? And they are learning from us. That's the natural order of love. Not the other way around where we are resourced by them. But yes, I believe they have these beautiful gifts to give of their own volition when we
Y-
open to receiving. So
Yeah, and there's such a different, there are those relationships, parent-child relationships where the child ends up is basically being the parent
yeah, that was me.
for an emotionally needy parent, parent
Yeah,
for an emotional and that's a whole different, kettle of fish, right?
yeah,
um when we can go to someone with when we can go to them without need and receive their gifts,
yeah,
that's we know what it's like when
yeah,
somebody doesn't you're not doing something for someone because they're needy
yeah,
and they see themselves as victims, but you're doing it from a heart space of something you would like to contribute that they may not even, you know, they may not even like the people who called you and offered to support you
yeah.
that day. You didn't even know in a way. You probably didn't even know exactly what you needed. You certainly didn't seem to know who you could call.
No,
And so from that heart space, they were offering. And if you had picked up the phone and said, "Oh no, I'm fine. Don't want to trouble you. Thanks.
right.
Bye." And then cried as soon as you hung up and gone back into your desperation, that would have been less of a gift to them than your willingness to receive.
Yeah,
So, when I'm
yeah,
like that energy of being where you said we're responsible as the adults, and responsibility is responding with what's required. Like when we're willing to do that deep work and be that vulnerability, whatever's required to heal ourselves so that we can bring our light selves, our whole being
yeah,
to our children.
yeah,
It is a beautiful gift, and when we can acknowledge like what they would like to gift to us, not from that like neediness of I'm empty and my child is going to finally make me feel loved and valuable,
exactly.
but from the space of like, wow,
Yeah,
they are so, know so much about enthusiasm.
yeah,
Next time you're watching a kid who is leaping about, like ask yourself if I could receive, like, if what do they know about enthusiasm that I could receive?
yeah,
People say it all the time. Oh, I wish I had a tenth of that kid's energy. But they're absolutely unwilling to receive it. They wouldn't be willing to have that energy in a million years. They had 1/5 of that energy, they'd be like, "I'm having a panic attack. This must be a heart attack. Give me a medication." Like, because adults were supposed to be like, "Ah." Anyway,
right.
but so look at this enthusiasm and go, "Okay, what do they know about enthusiasm that I could receive?"
Yeah,
And just see what happens.
yeah.
Be curious and see like, "Whoa, actually I suddenly
Oh, yeah,
they don't seem loud and annoying now, and I feel better."
right.
I've done that, and it's actually what happened was, like, I was in a pool with a bunch of loud kids, and
Yeah,
it was driving me nuts. I asked that question, I was, like, suddenly like, "Oh, this is fun watching them. I feel better."
yeah,
And that was a gift from them, not because I was, like, that was their gift.
yeah.
So, anyway,
Oh, our children are such our teachers, aren't they? Like,
yeah, they absolutely are.
they have catapulted me into whole new realms.
Yeah, and made a demand for me
Yeah,
to show up for them
yes,
that has been not comfortable always, but has been Uh,
yeah.
it's one of the greatest gifts I've received.
I honestly think that if I didn't have my kids, I probably would have ended up in the loony bin. I'm not joking. I was so far out of touch with receptivity and the balance of
Mhm.
the feminine and the masculine in my life and the need to control everything. And I probably would have had a mental breakdown by this age, honestly. My kids coming into my life they've been my greatest impetus for healing. And
Wow.
I am so grateful, you know. And that experience that I had of my abortion was one of the greatest impetuses for healing. I encourage you to read the chapter because I can't really go into all of the details of how and why in this, short podcast, but um, it opened me up in ways that I needed but didn't know that I needed. because we don't really know what we need before we have kids until we have them, and we're, you know,
Exactly what you said.
climbing
That
the
is,
walls. Yeah.
it's the willingness to make a choice, and then what's required shows up, and then you make a choice and what's required. It's not about like knowing it all
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. This has been so I know you and I, we could like sit here,
Yes.
for a really long, I mean, be here talking for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap it up for today, but I'm so glad you've been here. I'll invite you back. We can talk more. I'm so excited that this book is going out in the world, and I have had the great honor and fortune to read your chapter, and it is astounding. And so I would say to listeners, and I know I have not been able to read the chapters of all of the authors. There's probably maybe like 13, 15 additional authors besides the two of us. I am sure that every single one of those chapters holds gifts, insights, possibilities, invitations, tools, to lead us toward trusting ourselves, setting aside that fear, choosing greater, becoming whole. And I really believe that we're women warriors here to change the world.
Yeah.
And this is a book of women who are willing to step into that power.
Yeah.
And I'd invite everyone
we have these
to come along on that journey.
Really juicy gifts that we are offering into the world right now with these stories that we've shared. I mean, they're really, really juicy. I've read yours, Michelle, and it's an offering. It's always a beautiful offering. And I hope that people will pluck the fruit, and I hope that they will open to receiving the fruit and the ecstasy and the joy of what it is that we have to share. And I also hope that they open to the listening, that like we talked about, just really open to taking a deeper dive into their own consciousness that may or may not be triggered by each of these stories of women sharing so vulnerably. I'm sure that at least one of the stories in this book will push a button of at least one person. And if you are that
and in
person,
that, the world will change.
Yes. If you are listening and you are that person, this is your opportunity to take that nugget and use it for your healing and your growth, because it's showing you something, right? And I can't wait, because I know that when I read the rest of these stories that I'm going to be receiving so much and growing and healing and going within and doing my work and processing, because hey, that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for.
Yay.
The growth.
Well, and thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am so grateful for you in the world, Diana, and so grateful that you came on to talk with me today.
I feel the same way. Thank you so much for having me today.
Hey, Mama, are you curious about something you heard today? For more resources from this episode, check the Calmer Mom podcast show notes. And if you know that easier pregnancy and birth and joyful, confident motherhood are possible, but everyone is telling you you're crazy to think so, schedule a free chat with me or discover more Calmer Mom resources at calmermom.solutions. You got this, Mama, more than you think you do, and I'm here to help. Thanks for listening.